see you all here because I know that, you're on Zoom, and I don't know about you, but I'm Zoomed out myself. And so thank you so much for showing up anyways. I think that you're really showing your commitment to your education and that you're seriously considering graduate school. So we're excited to be with you as on part of your journey. Just a little bit about me. I'm a graduate student myself. I attend USC. I'm a doctoral candidate, and I want to just encourage you. I am a mom and I have 3 girls, a stepdaughter, and 2 little ones. And, I think that everybody has just kind of like their own reasons for going to grad school. For me, I have children. And so it was important for me to show them that education is the way. And our house is the only way. And there are no other, there is no other way. So I just wanted to be that role model for them. And also I do work in higher education. And so this, getting an advanced degree is kind of like the only way to move up in higher education. And so these are kind of like the main reasons that I did this, but also identify as a woman, identify as Black. And for me, like these are really important identities that I want to kind of like show the world that, we can do it. And that I'm here, and I can be, just as, educated as everybody else. So that's just like a little, a few reasons why I chose it. I always share this, but I am the oldest child. And so, there's always been a little bit of pressure on being the oldest in my family to kind of exceed above, everybody else. So with that, I just wanted you to know that, if I could go to graduate school, you can do it too. There's never a right time. I was pregnant when I got accepted to my program. And, they say like, oh, when is the right time? That doesn't exist. And so just do whatever feels right for you. If you need to take a break, you can take your break. If you want to go straight to it, then go straight to it. So, but with that, our goal today is to assist you in the graduate school application process. So we'll do that by sharing with you how to choose a school and a program that's the right fit for you. And what I mean by that is looking at your values, your interests, and your career goals, and making sure you find a program that fits those different criteria that you have set out for yourself. And then today we'll also be sharing with you the basics of applying to graduate school and how to fund your education. And this is very important, especially for me, it was. And then lastly, we're going to connect you with some of our academic departments on campus. So you'll have more of those as resources as well. So I think that was really short, but with that, I just want to again welcome you to UCLA, and hopefully you'll consider us for your graduate studies, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of you in the fall. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. A little clap there for you. Our next co-speaker or co-presenter today, she's actually going to be facilitating the chat today. Her name is Rachel Granillo. She is a graduate student ambassador here at the UCLA Graduate Division, Diversity, Inclusion, and Admissions Office. Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm just happy to be here. And I'm also, like Erica said, I'm a graduate student currently at UCLA. I'm studying production and directing documentary in the film school. And it's exciting, and it was my dream program. And it did take a lot of refining to find the program that I wanted to be in. And I just got lucky that it was also at my dream school. So like it kind of worked out for me, and it was a really long process and a lot of big life decisions. And I came straight from my undergrad. So that was also a factor going into this that made it scary and exciting. And I'm very new to the process as well. I just went through it in this past year. So I'm hopefully a supporter in this journey, and I'm here if you have questions in the chat. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. A little applause for you there as well. Alrighty, so before we actually jump into the presentation itself, we'd like to go over some virtual community guidelines. So let me share my screen here with you all. One moment, please. All righty. Can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Let me put it in full screen. Alrighty, so some virtual community agreements before we get started on this presentation. First and foremost, we'd like to acknowledge that as a land-grant institution, the Graduate Division acknowledges the Gabriel Tobonga peoples as the traditional land caretakers of Tobangar, Los Angeles Basin, South Channel Islands. Here are some virtual community agreements. We do encourage you to keep your video on while in Zoom sessions to make the session as interactive as possible. However, we do understand that not everyone may be comfortable in doing so. And if that is the case, you are welcome to opt out of the video at any time. Please do dress in an appropriate manner if you intend to have your video turned on. Mute yourself throughout the entirety of the session simply to avoid any background noise and any other possible distractions. If you do need to step away from your computer for any reason, please be cognizant to turn off your video and remain on mute. Please use the chat appropriately, ranging from language and conversations being held. And if at any point you do have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Rachel will be monitoring the chat. And of course, this Zoom session will be recorded, so you are welcome to opt out of being recorded by turning off your camera. And in recording Zoom sessions, all chats are also recording, including private chats, so we do ask you to be cognizant of that. Alrighty, so let's go into the actual presentation now. Give me one moment while I pull that up for you all. Okay. Let's see. Okie dokie. Putting this in full screen. Okay, once again, welcome all Harvey Mudd College students. Thank you so much for being here. Today's presentation will be about the nuts and bolts of applying to graduate school, offered or hosted by the UCLA Graduate Division Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Admissions. Today's objectives will be to identify the components of a typical graduate application, understand how to choose potential graduate programs, and design an action plan for completing application components. Our agenda includes the graduate admissions overview, the application process, admission requirements, timeline, and action plan. The general admissions process typically is composed of 3 components. That includes research, applying, and choosing. So first, you want to make sure you do your research on which graduate institutions you'd like to apply to. Once you've selected those institutions, you must apply. Then, after you receive your acceptance letters from those institutions, you have to choose which institution would be the right one for you. Now, we do have a couple of tips when making a schedule for applying to graduate school, and that typically includes what you need to complete first before moving forward. So what do you have to do beforehand? And make sure that you have deadlines. So if you have these deadlines, work backwards from those application deadlines to today and add your action items. What should you do before that deadline to make sure that you meet that deadline? Now, before you actually start applying to graduate institutions, we always like to encourage you to do your research. So your research typically includes finding out a little bit more about yourself before you actually apply to graduate schools. That includes figuring out a little bit of your skills and interests. Maybe you are a psychology student who's interested in furthering their research at a well-known psychology institution that offers them the ability to do that. So they want to be able to increase their skills and their interest within that psychology graduate program. So they're going to look for institutions that offer them the ability to do so. You also want to look at institutional offerings. What can that institution offer to you in terms of not only academics, but financial? What kind of financial fellowships are available to you through that institution? What kind of faculty mentorship will you get when you go to that institution? Or what type of clubs can you join as a graduate student? So all of that, what does the university have to offer you? And of course, you also want to look at your career plans and goals. Why do you ultimately want to go to graduate school? What is your end goal? After you finish graduate school, what do you plan to do? What is your career path? So we want you to think of all these 3 things in order to come about with fit. So fit can encompass a whole bunch of things, not just skills and interests, institutional offerings, career plans, and goals. It also has other things to consider besides academic research and faculty mentoring. We also want you to think about housing, about family, schooling, and care. Does this institution offer you the ability to live near campus, or do you have to get an off-campus apartment? Do you have family or dependent that you need to take care of when you're in this institution? Do they offer you the ability to be able to get that care for your family while at this institution? You also want to look at health and wellness and arts and culture. Does this, maybe you want to go to an institution where you are living near parks because you love fresh air, you love the open space, you just like relaxing there, maybe studying there, or you'd like to go to a big city where they offer an abundance in arts and culture, where you can go to a museum every other weekend, or you can go to a play, or you can go watch a movie or something. So do they have something like that to offer you? You also want to consider professional networking, development, and conferences and annual meetings. Does this institution offer you the resources necessary to be able to develop professionally? Can you start networking within that institution? Can you start going to conferences and meetings and annual meetings to do your research or to present your research to other students, to other schools, to other professors? So to be able to build yourself, build your professional portfolio. And you also want to consider diversity and inclusion and graduate student organizations and support. You know, do they offer you the ability to embrace all your identities as a graduate student? If you are not only a graduate student, you're also maybe first gen, you're a student of color, you're a woman in STEM. Do they offer you the ability to take those identities and help reinforce them at your institution? And I know I'm giving you all these hypotheticals here, but we do have a graduate student here today, and we'd like to get her specific details about, what did you consider when you were thinking about going to an institution? Why did you ultimately decide to go to UCLA, Rachel?
So for me, like I said, the journey getting to grad school, it was always on my mind. My mom was a huge proponent in me going to grad school. So during my undergrad, basically I made like a list of things that I thought I would have fulfilled by the end of my undergraduate career. And if I didn't do those things, that was a list of things that I wanted out of my grad program. So when I was looking for a grad program, I was really reflecting on my time in my undergraduate career and like what things that I wanted to do that I didn't get to do, or whatever it may have been. And so that was like the school part of it. Everything else was location mostly. I applied all on the West Coast. I considered the East Coast, but I realized, I wasn't ready to move that far quite yet. So I applied to California schools and a school in Oregon. Housing was a really big thing. I know UCLA had these opportunities to live on campus, but there was also plenty of housing off of campus. And my parents live in Southern California, so even commuting would be an option for UCLA. Faculty mentoring was a huge, huge thing. The program that I'm personally in is very small. So we do make a lot of connections through faculty, and those faculty bring in so many of their own connections. And especially with the industry I'm in, connections are super important. And having the UCLA Film School title on your resume is sometimes just helpful. So knowing that was a really big factor into choosing UCLA. I love Los Angeles as well. So like I went to my undergrad in Northridge, which is not far from LA, and I really liked the area and I kind of wanted to stay in the area. So when I did get in, it was like a no-brainer. The program was perfect, the location was perfect, the faculty were so supportive and amazing and throughout the whole process. So that was kind of the main factors going into how I chose this program. And specifically, like, I think another thing also that isn't a part of this, and this will be the last thing I say on it, is how long the program is. Because for me, that was really important. I'm a good student, but I'm not the biggest fan of school itself. So like how long the duration of the program was really important to me. So trying to find those things as well that may not be on these lists that are important to you can be really helpful. My program's 2 to 3 years long. Other programs was looking at are only 1 year long. And that did have a significant pull for me. I almost went to this other school because it was only a 1 year program. And I was like, man, that'd be really great. I would have my degree done in just a year. So kind of making that pros and cons list of different factors at each school was really helpful. I made an Excel sheet and everything. And that was really helpful, just getting organized with your thoughts, because there are so many factors that go into this decision. So that was kind of my process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that with us. And yeah, like Rachel said, this is a non-exhaustive list. There's a lot of other things to consider. And if you just want to take a pen and pencil, or you want to get on your laptop and create some sort of Excel sheet or some document where you just list things where you want to find the proper fit for you in terms of everything, consider everything. So there's a lot of things besides the factors we have here on the screen for you. And we do have some academic fit questions that you can start asking yourself as well. So a couple of questions include, what are your objectives? Why do you want to go to graduate school? If you are going into research, what kind of research is being conducted in the program of interest? Or if you're more into the professional route, what kind of internships are available to you in that professional career? What ultimately do you want to get out of your research? Who are the faculty that you can work with on these projects? And as well, considering, how are you paired with faculty? Do you get to choose faculty, or does the program select the faculty for you? And then more questions to consider. What are your types of preferred communications and mentoring styles? Are you more individualistic, or do you like more teamwork? What type of training are you looking for? What do you wish to develop further in terms of your skills, maybe your interests? What type of team work would you like to do? Are you more into the teamwork aspect, or are you more into the individual aspect? And then, who can you reach out to? How can you network within that program in terms of maybe alumni who have completed the program, or connecting with other grad students on campus? And a big thing about graduate school is networking. So you always want to ask yourself, who is in your network? This is you, the future grad student. I am a recruiter, so is Rhiannon, and so is Beverly, who I saw join this call. She is our coordinator for outreach and recruitment. So Beverly, welcome. So she's also a recruiter. And essentially, by nature too, Rachel is a recruiter. So we are recruiters. You are connected to us now. So you can contact us for any information in regards to UCLA Graduate School. We are more than happy to connect you with other people on campus to help you expand your network. That includes student affairs officers or graduate student advisors. They are the go-to people for specific programs. They know everything about their specific programs in the graduate institution that you want to go to. So these are people that you can go to if you have any questions about academics, about connecting you with possible faculty, maybe alumni of the program or current students. So they can help you get connected with faculty, and then faculty can help you get connected with graduate students on campus as well. And then those graduate students can help you connect with faculty, so on and so forth. And then you can also, once you start getting your connections built, you can start contacting postdoctoral students who are already have completed this program and are actually doing additional academics besides the ones that they already did, and then alumni and other students within your network. So you want to expand your network as much as you can. And you can also do that by conducting informational interviews. Now, when doing informational interviews, you want to make sure that you research and prepare questions beforehand. You also want to make sure that you identify the person that you're going into the informational interview with, whether that be a student affairs officer or a recruiter like myself, or maybe faculty, or maybe another current graduate student for that institution. And you want to conduct that informational interview, ask them all those questions that you prepared beforehand, and then you want to make sure that you follow up and you manage that relationship. You want to make sure you thank them for their time to speak with you, as well as thank them for any advice that they may have provided you with. And these are some questions that you may want to ask them when going into an informational interview. You want to ask about possible summer research opportunities at the institution, admission processes or requirements for the graduate program of your interest, connecting you with faculty that align with your research interest or your professional interest. You want to also connect graduate students and want them to help you connect with grad students and postdoc students. And you want to ask to see if they have any departmental support for graduate students, whether that be academic or financial. And these are a couple more questions to ask. What influenced you and motivated you in your area of research? You want to get to know them. Why did they go into that particular area of research? Why should they help you get into that particular area of research? And I see here that Rachel has her hand raised. Rachel, do we have a question?
No, I'm sorry. You can finish. I was just gonna add I did experience this and had an informational interview before I applied to the program. So I did want to kind of just speak on it if I had the chance.
Go right ahead. Yeah, no problem.
So yeah, I also encourage you in your network to reach out to the people at your campus in your college, and whether that's your professors or your advisors that you already know. That's how I got my interview with the director of the program that I applied to. One of my professors is like besties with her. And so she hooked me up and she sent me her email, and that's how I got in the door. And honestly, I think it actually really helped me get into the school was that she already knew my face, she knew my name. She knew I was prepared. I came with a physical list of questions written down in a notebook, and she even made a comment on it, and she liked how prepared I was for it. So these types of things do really help, because these are the same people, depending on who you talk to. Sometimes they're the same people who are interviewing you later in the process. These are the same people looking at the applications for the school. So if it's possible, if you do have those connections, it's really important to utilize them. So I did want to harp on the importance of this topic that Erica is talking about.
Yes, thank you so much, Rachel. Yes, the importance of making connections. Start going to those office hours, start speaking to your professors, get to know them a little bit better. And ultimately, they can also help you connect with their network. So like Rachel did, she connected with her professor, and that professor helped her connect with a director for her film studies program here at UCLA. So that was very great. Yeah. And she came prepared. Always come prepared to an informational meeting with those questions. Make sure you get those questions beforehand. So when you're actually in that informational interview, you have some sort of agenda that you can help follow, and you can just help the conversation, the informational meeting just flow. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Alrighty. And a couple more questions to consider for informational interviews. Those includes, what research are you conducting currently? What have your current research results revealed? If it is currently ongoing, what is going on with your research? Hey, maybe can I help with your research? If you have the opportunity to have a student on board. And then what challenges or trends are you seeing with your research? But you can also ask, what is the direction of your research? And ultimately, what else should I know about you, beyond just research? What can I know about the program itself, about your classes or curriculum that you're teaching here at this university? Get to know that professor, or get to know the person that you're speaking with. Other questions to consider, of course, you want to ask them about mentoring, expectations, funding, definitely funding, and lifestyle. So these are just a couple more questions to consider. Of course, this isn't a non-exhaustive list. You know what you're going for, you know what you want to know, or you want to set your goals for your expectations for that informational meeting. So you want to ask questions that will help you reach your goals. So get you that information that you want to know or you need to know before applying to those institutions. Alrighty, so we now transition over from finding your academic fit for a graduate institution over to the application process. So this is a non-exhaustive list. Again, I'm gonna say non-exhaustive because this is just a list of general things that are required by a graduate application. There may be other things, other requirements that may be required for your application. We always encourage the student to double check with the institution that they're applying to make sure that they are fulfilling all admission requirements for that program. So of course, there will be an online application and more than likely an application fee. As a current student, you may be eligible for an application fee waiver, so you may not need to pay that fee at all. At UCLA, we have two types of fee waivers. We have the need-based fee waiver. So if you are a current student currently enrolled in an institution and you are receiving financial aid from that institution, then you qualify under the need-based fee waiver. If you are a student in a pipeline program such as the McNair Scholars, Mellon Mays, Prep Scholar, Build, then you also qualify for a fee waiver, and you would need a letter from your program coordinator saying that you are a student within that program, within that pipeline program, and you would qualify for that fee waiver. To learn more about this, you can go to our website, grad.ucla.edu, to learn a little bit more about our fee waivers. Some other things to consider: statement of purpose, personal statement. We'll get into a little bit more detail right now about those two essays. Resume and CV, letters of recommendation. Typically 3 letters of recommendations are required. Depends on your program though, always double check. Official test scores like the GRE, that may be changing though because of current COVID-19 restrictions. We'll get into a little bit more about that a little bit later into the presentation. Official TOEFLs and or IELTS scores if you are an international student and you are not exempt. Official transcripts from all post-secondary institutions you have attended, as well as any supplemental departmental materials such as writing samples, art portfolios, or anything like that. Depending on the program you're going to, they may require extra documents be submitted with your application. Alrighty, so a big question that we typically get is, what GPA should I have for going to graduate school? Now, most graduate schools actually require you to have a 3.0 or higher, though those GPA requirements may vary from program to program. For instance, if you're looking at a much more competitive program at an institution, it's likely that you can go into the program with a 3.0 or higher, but it's going to be a little bit competitive. So you want to have at least a GPA of 3.5 or higher. But we want to emphasize that most institutions do not only look at your GPA, they look at the holistic admissions. So what they're looking at is all of your application, not simply your GPA. They're also looking at your letters of recommendation, at your statement of purpose, at your personal statement, at your supplemental materials that you submitted with your application, at your GRE test score if the GRE is still required. So they're looking at all those things to kind of get a sense of who you are as a person and if you'd be the best fit for their graduate program. Now, one of the things that those admissions committees do definitely look at are your admissions essays. We'd like to differentiate the 2 types of essays that are typically required in a graduate application. The first one being the statement of purpose. In the statement of purpose, you want to let that program know why you want to go into the program. What academically motivated you to go into that program? What kind of experience has prepared you to go into that program? Maybe you were in a summer research program and you got some research experience and you feel as though you want to expand on that research experience. So you think that that program is the perfect fit to help you expand on that research. You know, what are your professional goals related in pursuit of this degree? So you want to let them know in your statement of purpose why you want to go into that graduate program, as opposed to your personal statement, where you want to let them know a little bit more about yourself, more about your educational, cultural, economic, and social experiences that have shaped your current academic journey. What kind of accomplishments, challenges, or barriers have you met in pursuit of your higher education? So again, I want to compare or juxtapose these two essays: statement of purpose, why you want to go into that program, what have you done to prepare yourself to go into that program, as opposed to personal statement. Who are you as a person? What has shaped you on your academic journey? And what will ultimately this graduate program help you become in terms of your career goals and plans? At UCLA, we do have an additional essay that is actually combined with the personal statement. It's called the diversity statement, and it is generally a part of the fellowship application. Here at UCLA, we offer two types of fellowships for students. There is, for the PhD, it's called the Coda Robles. It helps fund a good portion of your PhD studies. I believe it helps fund at least 4 years of your PhD studies. So if you're applying to a PhD program and you submit this diversity statement, you may qualify to get those 4 years fully funded. Or if you're going into a master's program, there is the Graduate Opportunity Fellowship, which helps fund, I believe it's a year of your master's program. Great opportunity. So definitely, if you have the opportunity to submit a diversity statement, if you do plan on going to UCLA, submit that diversity statement and you would be eligible for whichever fellowship it is, depending on the type of program you're going into, whether that be a PhD or a master's program. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about that diversity statement, you can definitely reach out to either Rhiannon, myself, or Beverly, or you can always visit our website, grad.ucla.edu. Alrighty, so a couple of essay writing tips for you all. Please avoid duplicating information from one essay to the other. Highlight what makes you distinct, what in terms of your perspective, in terms of your graduate program and your future profession. You want to be intentional with your language. Don't use "I wish I can," "I hope I can." Rather say, "I will," "I am going to," with this graduate institution or with this graduate opportunity, I will become a professor. I will go into this field. So make sure you are intentional with your language. And of course, you want to be coherent. Make sure your essays have a beginning, middle, and end. What has led up to what you want to do? What has led up to why you want to go into graduate school? And make sure these essays make sense in any order that they're read. You don't want to start off your essay in your statement of purpose and then continue it in your personal statement. You want to make sure that those two essays are separate from each other. And of course, some graduate applications do require that you submit your resume or CV, depending on the type of program that you're going to. If you're going into a more professional program, it's likely that you'll have to submit a resume. If you're going into a more academic program, like a PhD program or master's program, it's likely that you'll have to submit a CV. And within those documents, you want to make sure that you have your positions of employment and relevant details, any volunteer work or community service since high school. You want to highlight any relevant professional experience, use impactful language. And again, as I mentioned, resumes are typically for professional programs, whereas CVs are for academic and doctoral programs. So some examinations that you may need to take before actually submitting your application. If you're going into a master's or PhD program, you've already heard of this examination. It's the GRE, or the Graduate Record Exam. If you want to go into medicine, law, dentistry, pharmacy, or business schools, they all have their own admission requirements or admissions tests. So for instance, medicine has the MCAT, law school has the LSAT, and business school has the GMAT. Now, when preparing for taking these admissions exams, for instance, the GRE, you want to make sure that you do not push that application deadline. Make sure that you register early. If that examination is open in October and there are seats available in June, you want to make sure that you get that, you sign up for that GRE examination as soon as possible, at least 1 month in advance of your application deadline, preferably the summer before. Because ETS or the website that administers, the company that administers the GRE examination typically takes some time to actually score your exams and to transmit those scores over to the institutions that you have requested. That's why we always recommend that you go early for that GRE examination. And before you consider paying for anything, we do have a resource that is free and available to you that is called the GRE Power Prep 2. Our former vice provost used to actually work on the board for the ETS company, and they actually let us know that they have this opportunity available to students. So the GRE Power Prep 2 is essentially a practice exams for the GRE, and these are practice exams or actual GRE examinations from previous years. So you're getting the real deal here. So you don't have to pay for anything. You just go on Google, search up GRE Power Prep 2, and you'll get those. I believe it's up to 2 or 3 free examinations. So definitely take advantage of that free resource. Alrighty, so now we get into a very, very important part of the presentation, which is letters of recommendation. As I mentioned previously, typically 3 letters of recommendation are required, but here are some steps to take when asking for letters of recommendation. You want to identify recommenders who can speak to your intellect, your aptitude, your research, your persistence, and your readiness for graduate school. Once you have identified those recommenders, you want to ask them, but you also want to make sure that you give them plenty of notice to write you a letter of recommendation. But when you ask them, you should be asking them like this: Professor so-and-so, do you think that you can write me a strong letter of recommendation? If they pause, if they need some time to think about it, thank them kindly and move on to the next recommender who can possibly give you a strong letter of recommendation. You also want to be strategic in terms of what you want that recommender highlighting about yourself. So you want to provide them with any talking points, such as your statement of purpose or your transcripts or any relevant paperwork and or resume to help them write a little bit more for your letters of recommendation. I always recommend providing them with a brag sheet. So listing things from top to bottom, from most important to not as important. So at the top, you can let them know of any accomplishments that you've done thus far in your undergraduate or your current academic career, stuff that you want them to highlight in your letters of recommendation. So definitely doing a brag sheet and then providing them with this additional info. And of course, after the application process, you want to make sure that you follow up with your recommender, manage your relationships. If you were accepted into the program, let them know, because they want to know, hey, I wrote you a letter of recommendation. Did you end up getting into that program that I wrote you a letter of recommendation for? And if so, thank them and let them know about your current application process or your current application acceptance. And this is where I actually want to bring Rachel in again. Rachel, do you have any other tips for students when identifying recommenders for letters of recommendation, or any other types of tips for getting a strong letter of recommendation?
Yeah, so I think for me, the process of letters was fairly simple because I did have 3 people that I knew I had a strong connection with. I was doing work for 2 of the 3, and then the third was someone who I knew was just in my corner. They always, she was the one who actually connected me to the director of the program, and she was so open and willing. So it was fairly easy for me. And I think I always had this idea of one day I might need these people, so I don't want to let them down. I had that in my head from the very start of my undergrad. And by the end of my 3 years, I did have 3 solid people that I knew I could count on, because I knew they could count on me. So that's super important. It all comes back to those connections again. Those connections are so important. And if you feel like, you're at the end of your undergraduate career and you're like, oh my God, I don't have these connections, you do. I promise you do. And just start reaching out kind of early in the process. I would say like months before, like even if you're not sure if you want to go to graduate school quite yet, I think you should still reach out and just check in on people that you felt like you had a connection to, because they'll appreciate it. And if they are willing, they will answer you, and just kind of check in, especially now with COVID going on. I think it's so important to check in. The last thing about letters that I would say is that everyone approaches them differently. People who write these letters approach them all differently at a different process for each person that I was asking. One person basically had me write it, and then he wrote it in his own words. Basically had me outline what I wanted them to see, and then he wrote it in his own words. My second person said, asked me a bunch of questions about the program and asked me how I reflected those traits in my work. And then he wrote based on those, what I had in my own head of how I connect myself to the program. And then lastly, the last person, she kind of had me do the brag sheet of that Erica was speaking about, of what have I accomplished? What am I most proud of? And how does that reflect me wanting to be in this program? And I had to do that for each school that I applied to. So I asked them 3 times to write me 3 letters. And luckily, 2 of the programs were very similar, so they didn't have to repeat themselves very much. So being very clear in your intentions, and just creating that connection, that friendship, that relationship, and nurturing that is super important. And just being honest with them, and saying like, I think I can do this. I know I can do this, and I want you to believe in me too, and people will believe in you in that way. And getting that strong recommendation is very important, and these letters are very important. But I don't think any one thing is the most important thing, so I think it's all very important.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Rachel. Of course, like Rachel said, you want to approach them with intention. You want to make sure that you approach them with enough notice to help them prepare that letter for you. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Now we go on here to a graduate admissions timeline. This is more in tune to the UCLA graduate admissions timeline. So in September, typically the applications open. From November to December, many department deadlines close, so always be cognizant of those deadlines. In January, departments start sending out fellowships. In January to February, admissions notifications begin. In March, those admissions notifications continue. And then admissions processing start. In April 15th is a very, very important deadline. If you are offered a fellowship or any financial support for that institution, I do believe most institutions would like you to either say yes or no if you have been admitted into that program, to either tell them, yes, I will be attending your program, or no, I will not be attending that program, so that you can secure that funding. If not, that funding goes to another student. Um,
Erica, could I chime in actually on the April 15th
oh yeah, go right
deadline?
ahead, Beverly.
Hey, everybody. So to clarify, for April 15th, there's a agreement amongst multiple grad programs that the grad programs cannot pressure you to respond before April 15th. So, and this is for offers that have funding that are tied to it. And the idea is that you are welcome to still accept your admission after the April 15th deadline, but the funding might not be still there.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you so much, Beverly, for clarifying that. So like Beverly said, they do encourage you to make sure that you submit that SIR by April 15th. But after that deadline, that funding may not be secure. So May 1st is typically when final application deadlines for some departments start. May 15th is when the registrar starts sending emails to students who have SIR'd. And June 1st is when graduate division starts asking for your final academic transcripts. Alrighty, and here are just a couple of COVID-19 considerations. So as I mentioned before, the GRE may not be as required as it was in the past. We always encourage the student to check with the graduate division or the graduate studies website for any statements for consideration regarding COVID-19. We also recommend that you contact that department directly to make sure whether that GRE is optional or no longer necessary for that graduate application. And ETS actually, because of COVID-19, is temporarily offering an at-home test. So you have the ability to take that GRE from the comfort of your own home. All right, so how can you maximize your time before applying to graduate school? Well, of course, you want to grow your academic and professional network. As we've emphasized throughout this presentation, you want to make sure that you attend any conferences, if you're able to attend any virtual conferences, or reach out to graduate programs that you're interested in, set up those informational interviews, start talking to those student affairs officers, start connecting with recruiters, or just start connecting with your current faculty, start going to those office hours, start making those relationships. You also, again, want to strengthen and develop relationships with relevant faculty. You want to think of professors who can provide you with strong letters of recommendation. And of course, you want to think about your fit. You want to do your research. You want to consider which programs are a good fit for you. And you want to make sure that you consider both academic and non-academic factors. Now, we do want to help you make or create an action plan. So you want to think about a timeline as you think about the application process. You can do this by, getting a piece of paper, pen and paper will do, or if you want to do more of a computer, program-based thing, you can also go into these types of programs. So Todoist, Smartsheet, Trello, Gtask, and you can start creating a to-do list, including important deadlines, and you want to set up reminders so you stay on track of your graduate application process. For instance, this is an example of backwards planning. Say, for instance, you have an application due date or a hard deadline of December 1st. Alrighty, so December 1st is the hard deadline. You got to submit your application no matter what on that date. But you know yourself and you feel as though, I don't want to wait until that last minute. So I'm going to give myself at least 2 weeks before to submit that application. So your internal deadline is Friday, November 20th. But you also want to make sure that you have reached out to your recommenders and you give them enough notice to write you that letter of recommendation. So you give them at least 6 weeks notice, so the recommenders will provide you with their letters of recommendation by October 9th. But you also want to make sure that you provide them with a statement of purpose for your recommenders so they can have something to reference when writing your letter of recommendation. So you want to have your draft of that statement of purpose ready by early September. But your program also requires you to take some sort of admissions examination like the GRE. So you want to make sure that you take that GRE test in September or October. but you also want to make sure that you are preparing for that GRE examination. So you want to study from June to September, but you also want to make sure that you have already applied to take that test, or you have secured your spot to take that test in September or October in the summertime. So this is just a general action plan of what you can do in terms of backwards planning when starting to do the graduate admissions process. Currently, you are at a very good place to do this. So we definitely recommend that you start getting those to-do tasks if you do a plan to apply in the fall. So again, that application checklist, now is the time to be a perfectionist. You want to ensure name accuracy in all your documents. You'd be very interested to find out that we receive a lot of statements of purposes saying, oh my goodness, I am so excited to be applying to USC. You do not want to make that mistake. Definitely not want to make that mistake. So you make sure that you ensure name accuracy in all your documents. Also ensure that your statement of purpose, personal statement, diversity statement answers each of the university's prompt, word length, and formatting requirements, that you ensure that you are including the correct supplemental materials. And I'd want to emphasize once again, reach out to that academic department, make sure that you're fulfilling all their requirements for that application. And of course, proofread, proofread, proofread. You don't want to have some sort of spelling mistake, or again, you don't want to have that wrong name in that application, because it can be a little embarrassing. Alrighty, this brings us to the end of the presentation. Here is our contact information. If you do have any questions after this presentation, if you'd like to ruminate and ask us a little bit later, here is the contact information for Rhiannon, Beverly, and myself, and also our general email if you're unable to reach us at our personal emails. And again, acknowledgements for this presentation was adapted from Dr. Angela Cruz, and additional information provided by Dr. Maggie Grover and Dr. Nikki Woods. Alrighty, and thank you all for being here. In the actual chat, I'm going to drop the evaluation link. We actually would really love any feedback that you have about today's presentation. And I believe we have a couple of minutes or so for questions. Rachel, do we have any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Well, like I said, if you do have any questions after this presentation, if you need a little bit more time to ruminate or anything like that, you can always reach out to us at our contact information. I'm going to put that up on the screen once again here. And I'm going to drop that evaluation link right now. And thank you all for being here. Sarah, would you, do you have anything else to add or to say to the students?
I think the leaders of Project Decode collected questions if they did have any. Shani, would you mind addressing if they did submit any?
Yeah, I don't think I saw any questions, but I did have my own question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about applying, but I don't know if I want to apply like right after I graduate, like maybe a year or a few years after. I don't know, like, do you guys tend to view those kind of applicants differently? Or I'm also wondering about the recommenders. Since I'll be out of school for a few years, I wonder if like those will be as strong and if I can like ask different people instead.
Definitely. You know, a lot of students don't necessarily go into graduate school right after their undergraduate career. They actually like to take maybe a gap year or two, just to give themselves some time maybe to start looking at start building their professional networks, or, you know, start doing something besides school. So that is perfectly okay if you want to take that gap route or that gap year or so. What we always recommend the students to do is to maintain those relationships with your faculty. If you are currently talking to faculty, you know, keep up with them, send them an email every now and then. Be like, hey, professor, what have you been up to? You know, this is what I've been doing. This is what I've been doing outside of school thus far. And Rhiannon actually added that she took a 5-year gap, and she had some faculty that actually passed away at that point. Rhiannon, do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
it's a good point that you bring up. I mean, some of them, had been so long, and if they're older, then, they may pass away. But I like your point, Erica, just like keeping in touch with them because you want to make sure they remember you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that was helpful. So yeah, I took a 5-year gap, and then I took a 6-year gap between my master's and my doctoral program. So
Yes.
I mean, whatever works for you, if you can get it out the way sooner, because at that point I had children, I had gotten married, and just like different life factors starts like I guess bills start to accumulate. So it was much harder as far as like motivation to push myself to get back to school. So that's like one thing to consider.
Yeah. Thank you, Rhiannon. Yeah. So again, the admissions faculty or whoever is reviewing your application will not look at you differently. They're not going to be like, oh, wow, this student took a 5-year gap. Oh my goodness. No, they're totally different from all these other students. No, they want to get to know you as a person. You have your reasons maybe for taking a gap year. You have your reasons for wanting to not go to school directly after your undergraduate career. And Rachel, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I actually wanted to add to the other side of that. And we heard from Rhiannon, who took 5 years. I went in straight after my undergrad, and I graduated from my undergraduate early. So that was a huge deal. I'm the youngest one in my program. I'm one of like 4, I think, who went in straight after after graduating. Most people in our program actually are like in their late 20s, early 30s, and they took a long time after their undergraduate to make that decision. So and I also struggled with that because I was so young, of like, do I go straight into it? Do I keep the momentum going? Or do I take this gap year and kind of decide? And I think really reflecting on that, and if you don't know, my mom, again, is really big on options. So make yourself available to those options. If you don't know if you want to be in grad school, maybe apply to 1 or 2 schools that you really like the sound of, and just see what happens. And if you don't get in, then that's okay. And if you do get in, you can consider that, and you don't have to accept those invitations to be at those schools. That's what one of my friends did himself. He applied. He's graduating this semester, and he applied and he didn't get in, and he said, I'm going to take this year off and I'm going to reapply at the end of the year. So it's really a personal journey, and I think options are super important in this case. So definitely maybe something to consider.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Rachel. So yeah, if you want to go straight into graduate school right after your undergraduate career, go for it. If not, there is no harm, no foul in waiting some time to apply to graduate school. And like Rhiannon said in the chat here, make your gap year intentional, make sure that you're productive, start doing your researching institutions, graduate schools, and get some work experience if you're able to do so. Some research experience as well if you're able to get that. But yeah, it's never too late to start graduate school. Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Shani. I do see here that we are past the 1 o'clock mark. We could go for asking, or if you do have any more questions, we can definitely get those in the chat. If not, as I mentioned before, we're going to be sending our contact information to Sarah so she can share that all with you. We want to thank you again on behalf of UCLA Graduate Division, Rhiannon, Beverly, and Rachel, and myself for being here today to learn more about the graduate school application process. Yeah, thank you. And Sarah, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And Project Decode, thanks for being here. That's great. Great information.
Awesome.
All
Thank you
right.
all so much. Alrighty. So this brings us to the end of the presentation. Please feel free to log off. If not, I'll stay here for a little bit, a couple more minutes if you have any other questions. And yes, this slides and this recording of the presentation will be available afterwards.
Thanks again. Bye.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, I'm signing off.